sou nervosa hoje de fazer esse episódio, porque eu sei que eu vou me expor muito, que eu vou ser muito vulnerável com vocês. Eu quero falar de todas as coisas que eu amei e também as partes mais difíceis da minha experiência no Brasil. Espero que vocês vão entender minha história. Mas, antes de começar o episódio, quero convidar vocês ao Masterclass que estou fazendo. Vai te ajudar se você já fala inglês, mas você sente que você não fala de um jeito muito natural e você quer levar seu inglês para o próximo nível. Vamos falar das diferenças-chave entre português e inglês, porque isso é o jeito mais rápido de melhorar o seu inglês. Não estudar o livro inteiro de gramática, mas focar nas partes que são diferentes do português, porque em eles que você vai ser cometendo erros. Então, o link está na descrição, se você quer se inscrever. Bora para inglês, hein? Primeiramente, sempre quando alguém pergunta o que você acha do Brasil, eu continuo em português. Every time I met a Brazilian in Brazil, they would first ask me, "Where are you from?" And the second question would be like, "Do you like Brazil? What do you think of Brazil?" And I would always answer, "I love Brazil." And it's true. I absolutely love Brazil. However, there's something a bit deeper than this. It's more complicated than just this word, "I love Brazil," fits. And I wanted to talk about all of this today. But firstly, let's talk about the things that I absolutely love about Brazil. And the word to say that I love Brazil isn't enough, because it's more than this. Brazil feels like part of me now. I think that's the beautiful thing about learning another language, is that it's like that way of being and thinking kind of enter into your body. And I think Brazil feels like a part of me now. I listen to Brazilian music every day. Brazilian food, it's like the best thing ever. Pão de queijo, churrasco, pastel da feira, caldo da cana, feijoada. Gente, don't get me started on Brazilian food, because I love Brazilian food. I'm in love. But I think the thing that I love the most about Brazil is the people. The generosity, the connectedness. I loved how, every day there would be people trying to sell things to you, but you would just say, "No, thank you." And that was it. And it was like a genuine thank you, but no. And it was like everyone cared about each other. Everyone was like, this part of Brazil is just so beautiful to me. The connection between the people, it's not something I'd experienced in Australia. It's like everyone was more aware of each other. In Australia, it seems like people are a little bit more in their own little world and bubble. We're a lot more individualists, and Brazil seems to be a lot more collective. And I just thought it was so inspiring and beautiful. And at the same time, I found that I tried to change my brain to become a little bit more thinking about other people more and learn from Brazilians in this way. I managed maybe a little bit, but really, it's really hard to change your cultural makeup. Anyway, what else I loved about Brazil? Gosh, so much. Places. I went to some of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. Chapada Diamantina, so amazing. The waterfalls. I did a hike in the Valley do Pachi, Capão, Valley do Capão. Maybe my favorite little city that I went to in Brazil. The energy on the beach. I love the beach in Brazil. In Australia, I didn't really love the beach before Brazil. I was like, yes, it's nice, it's pretty, it's calm. But in Brazil, it's so fun. Like, because I think in Australia, we don't sell alcohol and food on the beach. You can't do this. So you can't really stay on the beach the whole day. Whereas in Brazil, you go there for the whole day and you buy food, delicious food, acai, and it's just so fun. It's such a vibe. And in Australia, it's more like beautiful nature time, calm. And I loved the beach vibe in Brazil. And now I want to talk to you a little bit more about the parts that I found actually really difficult to adapt to in Brazil. Firstly, I think when you arrive in a different country and you don't really speak the language, especially maybe if you are dating someone from there or someone that speaks the language really well, it kind of creates a little bit of an inequality. I was really dependent on my boyfriend in Brazil. He spoke for me a lot, he did everything complicated, and I felt like a child. Like I lost my independence and I couldn't really express myself fully in a way that was intelligent. So I felt, and this really over time slowly kind of made its way into my identity, and I felt just smaller and less capable. And it's nobody's fault, but it's just the way that it was. And I also didn't really get a lot of space from this. People told me a lot in Brazil to be careful because there's a lot more crime in Brazil. And this ended up becoming kind of a mental block for me in going to do things by myself. And my boyfriend at the time, he wasn't really interested in going out and meeting new people and doing new things. So, and I basically did nothing without him. So I lost my independence, I felt childish, and I didn't have any space to kind of reflect on this situation. And yeah, this started to really affect my experience. I remember one morning I woke up and I looked in my room and I just thought, one more day in this room, like another day here. Because I started to feel like my days were just the same thing. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't have any friends. So I didn't leave home a lot. I didn't go and experience Brazil in the way that I wished that I did. And I also kind of insulted myself, or eu me cobrava. Sometimes it's easier to find the word in Portuguese than English. Like I put myself down. I criticized myself in many ways, being like, why aren't you stronger? Why don't you go? Why are you so socially awkward? Why are you so introverted? You should be going to make friends. You should be doing other things. And this pressure that I was putting on myself also influenced my experience. Another thing that affected this situation is the way our relationship with money in Australia is very different to the Brazilian relationship with money generally. These are generalizations. But I come from a country where my Brazilian friend told me this. She said, in Australia, money serves you, but in Brazil, you serve money. And I saw this a lot, and it was kind of like every day I could just hear everybody talking about money all the time, how much things cost. And it's a very privileged view, but I wasn't used to this. I wasn't used to being so careful with money, and like my boyfriend didn't want to spend money. So I think this affected my experience as well, because I didn't know what to do. Like I was feeling trapped in this room, in this house, in this routine, and it didn't feel easy for me to just be like, well, let's go travel on the weekend. Let's go do something different. Because he didn't want to spend money, and I adopted this too. I started to develop a kind of anxiety in some way about spending money, because that was what the environment that I was in. And I might sound like a spoiled, privileged Australian, and I am a very privileged Australian, but that was my experience, and I had difficulty with that. That became a mental block in my mind. So I remember at one point when I'd spent all day in a house and a lot of time in my room, just feeling like I'm going to break. I don't know what to do with myself. For the first year as well, I didn't work. So it wasn't until about 6 months in that I decided I'm going to do a course to teach English. And so I did a course. And once I started teaching English, this really helped me because some of my identity came back to me. I realized that I am powerful, I'm capable, I'm creative. I absolutely loved making lessons for my students that would make them forget they were speaking English, make them interested, and make them just talk to me more freely. I would create lessons that were so fun for them, and it brought me so much joy to see them progressing in English. And it reminded me that I'm a powerful woman and I'm intelligent. So this really started to help. And I started therapy, and that helped too. My therapist was encouraging me. She told me that I needed to get out of the house more. And one goal that I had was to learn to take the bus by myself, because if I took the bus by myself, then I would just feel a bit more free. Like I could always just go get a bus and go somewhere and do something new. I wasn't trapped, but I tried to do that. But I was living in São Paulo, quite far out from the city. So when I went to take the bus to get not very far at all, it took me like 2 hours. And I ended up becoming less motivated again to go out. And then my grandpa got sick and I decided to come back to Australia. And every time I would come back to Australia, I didn't want this to be reality, but it was. When I would come back to Australia, I would start to feel a lot better. I would start to feel lighter. It's like being back around my friends would remind me of who I am, and I would just feel stronger and better. And I didn't want this to be reality. I had this vision in my head for so long of how I could be happy in Brazil and how I wanted to be happy in my relationship and in this whole situation. But this vision that I really held so tightly to, this vision of how it could be, it wasn't reality. And I started to kind of make me sick because I was telling myself, well, you just need to try this to be happier. You just need to go out more. You need to be more strong. You need to be brave. And this kind of disconnect, this always looking at this idea of how things could be, but not how I really was feeling, invalidating my feelings, my anxiety, and the fact that I was becoming more and more depressed was really starting to affect my health. I was just getting more and more anxious. So I made the hardest decision that I've ever made in my life, which was to stay in Australia and not go back to Brazil. And it was last year, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done, ever, by far. But I feel a lot better now. I'm happy. I feel me. I feel strong. I feel just good. And I still want to go back to Brazil and live some more time in Brazil. I want to experience Brazil a different way next time. I want to go out more. I want to see more of Brazil. I want to know the south of Brazil. I want to know the Amazon. I want to travel. Traveling is the main goal of my life, really. So the fact that I wasn't doing that for so long in Brazil just doesn't working for me. I hope all of that made sense. And if you're experiencing or having any of these feelings and feeling alone in these feelings in Australia, I hope this episode maybe helped you feel a little bit less alone. And I want to tell you that you can always reach out to me. on Instagram or WhatsApp. I'm here to talk. Agora é a hora do Mico de Semana. And I have a good one for you. Tem uma boa hoje. Eu ouvi esse ontem de minha editora linda. Ela é Blue Jam Productions lá na Insta. Se você quer algum editora, porque ela é maravilhosa. Então, ela foi querendo comprar um presente para a sogra dela. Ela está morando aqui na Austrália. E ela precisava de um papel para embalar o presente. E ela queria saber onde achar. E tive um jovem trabalhando na loja. E ela aproximou para ele. E ela fala, "Do you have wrapping paper?" Não. A cara olhou para ela assustada, gente. Wrapping paper. Ela perguntou para papel para assaltar sexualmente alguém. Oh, gente, não pode. Ai. Oh, tá mal esse, gente. Wrapping paper. Wrapping paper. Do you have wrapping paper? No. Então, gente, cuidado do pronúncia. Eu vou te ensinar a pronúncia certa, hein? O certo é wrapping paper. Errado, wrapping paper. Wrapping paper. Wrapping paper. A letra E, quando você fala E, wrapping paper, errado. Então, pensa, letra E, errado. A, wrapping paper, certo. Espero que isso te ajude. Agora você pode perguntar na loja, do you have wrapping paper? Não esquece do Masterclass. E te vejo na semana que vem. Tchau, tchau.